We had a tree down on the way up.
Good, good.
I'll watch you guys. I want to make sure you guys are up. Maybe give me the high sign when you guys are up, so I can make sure we're all.
Anybody want any white balance? I'm a full service senator.
I might tweet that out.
ABC, you guys are up. You good? Who else? Still waiting. We're good. We're good. Channel 8's good. 10, you guys up? Everybody good? 9, you're up. 13, you guys good? All right. Take it away, Senator.
I've just talked to the Chief of Staff of the White House, General Kelly, who we are quite familiar with in Florida. He was our commander of the United States Southern Command as a 4-star general before he retired. And they have got all the resources ready. They have had to hold people in FEMA from going to Texas, some of whom are already embedded into emergency operation centers in Florida, including this one. There's a FEMA representative, and they've pre-positioned supplies as well. Remember 48 hours ago, people thought this was going to be an East Coast hurricane, but it is now, what with being a Category 3, possibly a 4 for the west coast of Florida, it could be one of the most dangerous, because if the eye stays right off of the coast in the Gulf, fueled by the waters, that counterclockwise rotation of the wind will drive the water right up into the bays and estuaries, particularly Tampa Bay, further to the south, Charlotte Harbor, which is just north of Fort Myers. So it could be more than a wind event. It could be a water event, because once that water is driven up in the bay, it has no outlet, and it's going to wall up. For example, I talked to Congresswoman Castor yesterday and suggested that her mom, Betty Castor, there on Bayshore Drive, that they ought to go get her and go to a different location. But we will see as the intensity is coming up. Right now, the ones that are getting it the most are the eastern eye wall. It's somewhere between Big Pine, Key, and Marathon. And those, the ones, would be getting about 130 miles an hour. And then, of course, it's then coming right up the East Coast. It'll be off of Naples, right up the West Coast. It'll be right off of Naples, coming on up. And this is going to be an event in the panhandle of Florida as well. Certainly the Big Bend of Florida. Your questions?
Senator, what's your biggest fear at this point?
That we would have that wall of water and it would come right at high tide. You add all of that, you're going to have a significant storm surge.
Has the White House assured you of anything at this point? Have you been in direct communication with the president?
I have been talking to the Chief of Staff, General Kelly, of the White House this morning, and I spoke to General Kelly exactly about this phenomenon, that one of the worst nightmares is driving the water up into Tampa Bay and Charlotte Harbor. Right at the tip of Charlotte Harbor is Punta Gorda. And if you'll remember, that was dealt a severe blow back in the first decade of the 2000s by Hurricane Charlie. That was another one that was a surprise. It was supposed to go on up the coast, and suddenly it took a right hook and went right on up Charlotte Harbor, and Punta Gorda was ground zero.
Senator, what about the state level? Do you think the state has done enough, and do you think the governor has been visible enough?
I think there has been excellent cooperation and communication between the federal, the state, and the local governments. I've been in a number of emergency operation centers all over the state, and I have seen that cooperation. And that started early on. I also spoke to the mayor of Key West, and he likewise has been very pleased with that. After the storm, Senator Rubio and I are going to get on a Coast Guard airplane, and we're going to try to go in behind the storm into Key West if we can land, and then come on up the coast doing the inspections from the air.
When do you plan on doing that?
Well, if the storm is passed quick enough, they would pick me up somewhere early tomorrow afternoon.
Have you gotten any reports from that area at all, as far as damage?
I have not talked to the Emergency Operations Center in Monroe County. Most of them are being interviewed by the cable news, but they have all evacuated up to the northernmost Key Largo. As of yesterday, there were only about 10,000 people left in Monroe County, the Keys. That's a significant evacuation because it's a county that has about 150,000 people plus visitors. So that was a very significant evacuation.
Senator, we've been telling people for almost a week or more than a week how bad this is going to be, and people are trying to mentally prepare themselves that they could really lose everything. As they're facing some of these realities, what can you tell them as some bit of encouragement that Florida is strong, that we're prepared to rebuild and move past this?
By the time that the hurricane gets here, it's probably going to be 115 miles an hour. There is a significant difference between that and a Cat 5 of 155 miles an hour for destruction of the wind. The biggest risk is, even though we'll get damage from 115, the biggest risk is the water coming up Tampa Bay. And therefore, hurricanes do damage, and so does the flooding. And hopefully everybody has made the preparations. And hopefully, when told to evacuate by local law enforcement, hopefully they have evacuated.
Can you talk about the resources that might be available for the people who are going to have to rebuild?
First of all, they have homeowners insurance if it is a wind event. If it is a flood event, that's federal flood insurance. And if they are in a flood zone and have a mortgage on their house, they had to purchase federal flood insurance. So they will have that cushion of insurance. There are programs in the federal government, either through FEMA or the Small Business Administration, that are available to backstop the insurance that they would normally carry. So they'll just need to apply to the appropriate agency.
Senator Nelson, for a lot of people, once the storm is passed, you have that natural inclination of wanting to get home immediately. What's your recommendation to people?
Well, don't go back until law enforcement tells you can go back. But once you do, be prepared to see, if you're in a low-lying area, be prepared to see some water damage.
Senator, can you talk about the point of no return for law enforcement when the winds get too heavy? In fact, I'm not sure if we've reached that point already, where they can't help you. 911 systems cannot help you. Can you speak to the public about that?
Yes. Of course, these are the experts, and you ought to get them to tell you, but all local government and local law enforcement will make an assessment at which is the time that the winds are severely high, that it is a risk to their law enforcement and emergency operations personnel to be going out in the storm. At that point, it's the point of no return. that they cannot go out. Different jurisdictions have different conditions in which to do it. So you would need to ask them. Okay, now, how about any of y'all? Please share with us.
Well, thank you. No, very little other than we appreciate the senator being here and speaking with him again yesterday. We're certainly going to rely on assistance from our federal government in the recovery. We want everybody to certainly to remember that we know everyone's anxiety is high. We're going to get through this, and tomorrow we'll be talking about the recovery, and we'll be giving you a little bit of a different press conference on what to expect when to get back into your area, and of course the power outages that we realize we'll be giving you information, the EOC will, as to how we get those back up. As far as when we quit, many agencies you start getting into the tropical force storm winds, which will be a little bit later this afternoon. A lot of the cars will be pulled off the road. The bridges in Pinellas County will be closed. Tarpon Springs Road, they will not be allowing people into Pinellas County. I just spoke to Sheriff Galtieri a few minutes ago about that. You know, as we tell all our people, use common sense, talk to anybody who gets in a situation. If there's some special circumstance, make sure you explain it, and we'll just have to make an assessment and at that time on that, and we'll do the best we can. So thank you. I mean, there's people probably that are still out that aren't going to, and there's very little we can do. If someone calls us right now and says, hey, I just realized that this person has a special need they didn't anticipate, we'll try to get them out. And even during the emergency, we say we won't respond, but we do. If you can get in touch with us, if there's something, we will assess it. There's a lot of brave men and women, and they do some spectacular things. So I won't tell you it's hopeless. Just we won't be answering routine calls, but if there's still something, let us know, and we'll get to you as quickly as we can, okay? And I think it's common sense. Thank you.
And from the fire rescue standpoint, we're going to, we gave every station throughout the community wind meters, and we have a threshold. We look at between 40 and 50 miles per hour. It's not because the trucks are going to blow over, but there will be the danger of flying debris that puts our personnel at risk. There's a pre-scripted message that the 911 dispatch center will give you, will give any caller when we reach that threshold. And it may be reached at different times. So it's a large county, 900 plus square miles. So it may be reached at different times throughout the county. But the message will be pre-scripted. It is already pre-scripted. And when you call, if we're in that no response time, they'll give you the message that as soon as we're capable of reaching you, we will be out. They'll prioritize those calls. Each station will be holding them, and as soon as the wind speeds are favorable for us to respond, we'll be back on the road.
Anybody else? Okay.
Commissioner.
Yeah, Commissioner.
Thank you. Pat Kemp, Hillsborough County Commissioner. The only thing I have to add is that I have talked to Tico, and they're not here to tell us, but that there was a lot of belief and information, or they were concerned about people that had said that they were powering down, turning off power, shutting down plants, and they said that that is not accurate information. That actually, in terms of this hurricane hitting Hillsborough County, that it was a fortuitous, better than a weekday to hit, because the industrial load on a weekend is much, much lighter. And so they're in much better shape in terms of that, and that they are looking to keep online as much as possible, and they just wanted to dispel any belief about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Anybody else? Yes, sir. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Sure, thanks. Gentlemen. Thank you, Commissioner. Great to see you. Great to see you.